Sound vibrations going on in the background. Yes, but can we turn the mic volume up? Yeah. It needs to be louder. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Yeah, that's good. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay. You tell me when. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Seems like it went down. Maybe it's just so loud. Can I start, Jagadish? Am I? Oh, now? I start now? Okay. Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to our Sunday reading Krishna book to Srila Prabhupada. It's quite cold here in Vrindavan, so not so many readers come, but all of you can join in. The subtitles are below the page, and that makes it easy for you to follow along with us. And as we always do, let us offer our respectful obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and to each other. Namo Vishnuvadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Paskachadi Shatarane. So we can turn our Krishna books to chapter 81, the Brahmana Sudama, blessed by Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna, the Supreme... Oh, come in.
Can my husband join us well?
Yes, just come in and sit down and take a book.
Sit down.
Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supersoul of all living entities, knows everyone's heart very well. He is especially inclined to the Brahmana devotees. Lord Krishna is also called Brahmanya Deva, which means that he is worshipped by the Brahmanas. Therefore, it is understood that a devotee who is fully surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead has all
Valuable a thing may be, I do not accept it.
If my pure devotee offers me even the most insignificant things, a little flower, a little piece of leaf, a little water, but saturates the offering in devotional love, then not only do I gladly accept such an offering, but I eat it with great pleasure.
I was going to say, go on with the next one, but that's okay. Lord Krishna assured Sudama Vipra that he would be very glad to accept the chipped rice he had brought from home. Yet out of great shyness, Sudama Vipra hesitated to present it to the Lord. He was thinking, how can I offer such an insignificant thing to Krishna? And he simply bowed his head. Lord Krishna, the Supersoul, knows everything in everyone's heart. He knows everyone's determination and everyone's want. He knew, therefore, the reason for Sudama Vipra's coming to him. He knew that, driven by extreme poverty, he had come there at the request of his wife. Thinking of Sudama as his very dear class friend, he knew that Sudama's love for him as a friend was never tainted by any desire for material benefit. Krishna thought, Sudama has not come asking for anything. Sudama has not come asking anything from me, being obliged by the request of his wife. He has come to see me just to please her. Lord Krishna therefore decided that he would give more material opulence to Sudama Vipra than could be imagined even by the King of Heaven.
He then snatched the bundle of cheap rice which was hanging on the shoulder of the poor Brahmana, packed in one corner of his wrapper, and said, "What is this, my dear friend? You have brought me nice, palatable cheap rice." He encourages Sudama Vipra, saying, "I consider that this quantity of cheap rice will satisfy not only me, but the whole creation." It is understood from this statement that Krishna, being the original source of everything, is the root of the entire creation. As watering the root of a tree immediately distributes water to every part of the tree, so an offering made to Krishna or any action done for Krishna is to be considered the highest welfare work for everyone, because the benefit of such an offering is distributed throughout the creation. Love for Krishna is distributed to all living entities.
While Lord Krishna was speaking to Sudama Vipra, he ate one morsel of chipped rice from his bundle, and when he attempted to eat a second morsel, Rukmini Devi, the goddess of fortune herself, checked the Lord by catching hold of his hand. After touching the hand of Krishna, Rukmini said, "My dear Lord, this one morsel of chipped rice is sufficient to cause him who offered it to become very opulent in this life and to continue his opulence in the next life. My Lord, you are so kind to your devotee that even this one morsel of chipped rice pleases you very greatly, and your pleasure assures the devotee opulence in both this life and the next." This indicates that when food is offered to Lord Krishna with love and devotion, and he is pleased and accepts it from the devotee, Rukmini Devi, the goddess of fortune, becomes so greatly obliged to the devotee that she has to go personally to the devotee's home to turn it into the most opulent home in the world. If one feeds Narayana sumptuously, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, automatically becomes a guest in one's house, which means that one's home becomes opulent. The learned Brahmana Sudama passed that night at the house of Lord Krishna, and while there he felt as if he were living on a Vaikuntha planet. Actually, he was living in Vaikuntha, because wherever Lord Krishna, the original Narayana, and Rukmini Devi, the goddess of fortune, live, is not different from the spiritual planets Vaikuntha Loka.
Speed up just a little bit so much.
The learned Brahmana Sudama did not appear to have received anything substantial from Lord Krishna while at his palace. Yet he did not ask anything from the Lord. The next morning he started for his home, thinking always about his reception by Krishna, and thus he merged in transcendental bliss. All the way home he simply remembered the dealings of Lord Krishna, and he felt very happy to have seen the Lord. The Brahmana thought, it is most pleasurable to see Lord Krishna, who is most devoted to the Brahmanas. How great a lover he is of the Brahmanical culture. He is the supreme Brahman himself. Yet, he reciprocates with the Brahmanas. He also respects the Brahmanas so much that he embraced to his chest such a poor Brahmana as me, although he never embraces anyone to his chest except the goddess of fortune. How can there be any comparison between me, a poor sinful Brahmana, and the Supreme Lord Krishna, who is the only shelter of the goddess of fortune? And yet, considering me a Brahmana with heartfelt pleasure, he embraced me in his two transcendental arms. Lord Krishna was so kind to me that he allowed me to sit on the same bedstead where the goddess of fortune lies down. He considered me his real brother. How can I appreciate my obligation to him? When I was tired, Srimati Rukmini Devi, the goddess of fortune, began to fan me, holding the chamara whisk in her own hand. She never considered her exalted position as the first queen of Lord Krishna. I was rendered service by the Supreme Personality of Godhead because of his high regard for the Brahmanas, and by massaging my legs and feeding me with his own hand. He practically worshipped me, aspiring for elevation to the heavenly planets, liberation, all kind of material opulence, or perfection in the powers of mystic yoga. Everyone throughout the universe worships the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Yet, the Lord was so kind to me that he did not give me even a farthing, knowing very well that I am a poverty-stricken man who, if I got some money, might become puffed up and mad after material opulence, and so forget him.
The statement of the Brahmana Sudama is correct. An ordinary man who is very poor and prays to the Lord for benediction in material opulence, and who somehow or other becomes richer in material opulence, immediately forgets his obligation to the Lord. Therefore, the Lord does not offer opulences to his devotee unless the devotee is thoroughly tested. Rather, if a neophyte devotee serves the Lord very sincerely and at the same time wants material opulence, the Lord keeps him from obtaining it. Thinking in this way, the learned Brahmana gradually reached his own home, but there he saw that everything was wonderfully changed. He saw that in place of his cottage, there were big palaces made of valuable stones and jewels, glittering like the sun, moon, and rays of fire. Not only were there big palaces, but at intervals there were beautifully decorated parks, in which many beautiful men and women were strolling. In those parks, there were nice lakes full of lotus flowers and beautiful lilies, and there were flocks of multicolored birds. Seeing the wonderful conversion of his native place, the Brahmana began to think to himself, "How am I seeing all these changes? Does this place belong to me or to someone else? If it is the same place where I used to live, then how has it so wonderfully changed?
You okay?
While the learned Brahmana was considering this, a group of beautiful women and men and women with features resembled those of demigods, accompanied by musical chanters, approached to welcome him. All were singing and auspicious songs. The wife of Brahmana was very glad on hearing the tidings of her husband's arrival. With this great haste, she came out of the palace. The Brahmana's wife appeared to be beautiful, that it seems as if the goddess of fortune herself had come to receive him. As soon as she saw her husband's presence before her, tears of joy fell from her eyes, and her voice became so choked up and she could not even address her husband. She simply closed her eyes in ecstasy, but with great love and affection she bowed down before her husband, and within herself she thought of embracing him. She was fully decorated with gold necklace and ornaments, and while standing among the maidservants, she appeared like a demigod's wife, just alighting from an airplane. A Brahmana was surprised to see his wife so beautiful, and in great affection, and without saying a word, he entered the palace with her.
When the Brahmana entered his personal apartment in the palace, he saw that it was not an apartment, but the residence of the King of Heaven. The palace was surrounded by many columns of jewels. The couches and the bedsteads were made of ivory and bedecked with gold and jewels, and the bedding was as white as the foam of milk and as soft as a lotus. There were many whisks hanging from golden rods, and many golden thrones with sitting cushions as soft as lotus flowers. In various places there were velvet and silken canopies with laces of pearls hanging all around. The structure of the building stood on excellent transparent marble with engravings made of emerald stones. After all, the women in the palace carried lamps made of valuable jewels. The flames and the jewels combined to produce a wonderfully brilliant light. When the Brahmana saw his position suddenly changed to one of opulence, and when he could not determine the cause for such a sudden change, he began to consider very gravely how it had happened.
He thus began to think, from the beginning of my life, I have been extremely poverty-stricken. So what could be the cause of such great and sudden opulence? I do not find any cause other than the all-merciful glance of my friend Lord Krishna, the chief of the Yadu dynasty. Certainly, these are gifts of Lord Krishna's causeless mercy. The Lord is self-sufficient, the husband of the goddess of fortune, and thus he is always full with six opulences. He can understand the mind of his devotees, and he sumptuously fulfills the devotees' desires. All these are acts of my friend, Lord Krishna. My beautiful dark friend Krishna is far more liberal than the cloud, which can fill the great ocean with water without disturbing the cultivation with rain during the day. The cloud brings liberal rain at night just to satisfy him. And yet, when the cultivator wakes up in the morning, he thinks that it has not rained enough. Similarly, the Lord fulfills the desire of everyone according to his position. Yet, one who is not in Krishna consciousness considers all the gifts of the Lord to be less than his desire. On the other hand, when the Lord receives a little thing in love and affection from his devotee, he considers it a great and valuable gift. I am a vivid example of this. I simply offered him a morsel of cheap rice, and in exchange, he has given me opulences greater than those of the King of Heaven.
What the devotee actually offers the Lord is not needed by the Lord, for he is self-sufficient. If the devotee offers something to the Lord, it acts for his own interest, because whatever a devotee offers the Lord comes back in a quantity 1,000,000 times greater than what was offered. One does not become a loser by giving to the Lord. One becomes a gainer by millions of times. The Brahmana, feeling great obligation to Krishna, thought, I pray to have the friendship of Lord Krishna and to engage in his service and to surrender fully unto him in love and affection. Life after life, I do not want any opulence. I only desire not to forget his service. I simply wish to be associated with his pure devotees. May my mind and activities be always engaged in his service. The unborn Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, knows that many great personalities have fallen from their positions because of extravagant opulence. Therefore, even when his devotee asks for some opulence from him, the Lord sometimes does not give it. He is very cautious about his devotees, because a devotee in an immature position of devotional service may, if offered great opulence, fall from his position due to being in the material world. The Lord does not offer opulence to him. This is another manifestation of the causeless mercy of the Lord upon his devotee. His first interest is that the devotee not fall. He is exactly like a well-wishing father who does not give much wealth into the hand of his immature son, but who, when the son is grown up and knows how to spend money, gives him the whole treasury house.
The learned Brahmana thus concluded that whatever opulences he had received from the Lord should be used not for his extravagant sense gratification, but for the service of the Lord. The Brahmana accepted his newly acquired opulence, but he did so in a spirit of renunciation, remaining unattached to sense gratification, and thus he lived very peacefully with his wife, enjoying all the facilities of opulence as the prasadam of the Lord. He enjoyed varieties of food by offering it to the Lord and then taking it as prasadam. Similarly, if by the grace of the Lord we get such opulences as material wealth, fame, power, education, and beauty, it is our duty to consider that they are all gifts of the Lord and must be used for his service, not for our sense enjoyment. The learned Brahmana remained in that position, and thus his love and affection for Lord Krishna increased day after day. It did not deteriorate due to great opulence. Material opulence can be the cause of degradation and also the cause of elevation, according to the purposes for which it is used. If opulence is used for sense gratification, it is the cause of degradation, and if used for the service of the Lord, it is the cause of elevation.
It is evident from Lord Krishna's dealings with Sudama Vipra that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very, very much pleased with a person who possesses Brahmanical qualities. A qualified Brahmana like Sudama Vipra is naturally a devotee of Lord Krishna. Therefore, it is said, Brahmano Vaishnava, a Brahmana is a Vaishnava. Or sometimes it is said, Brahmana Panditaha. Pandita means a highly learned person. A Brahmana cannot be foolish or uneducated. Therefore, there are two divisions of Brahmanas, namely Vaishnavas and Panditas. Those who are simply learned are Panditas, but not yet devotee of the Lord, or Vaishnavas. Lord Krishna is not especially pleased with them. Simply the qualification of being a learned Brahmana is not sufficient to attract the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not only must a Brahmana be well qualified according to the requirements stated in scriptures such as Srimad Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, but at the same time, he must be a devotee of Lord Krishna. The vivid example is Sudama Vipra. He was a qualified Brahmana, unattached to all sorts of material sense enjoyment, and at the same time, he was a great devotee of Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna, the enjoyer of all sacrifices and penances, is very fond of a Brahmana like Sudama Vipra. And we have seen by the actual behavior of Lord Krishna how much he adores such a Brahmana. Therefore, the ideal stage of human perfection is to become a Brahmana Vaishnava like Sudama Vipra.
Sudama Vipra realized that although Lord Krishna is unconquerable, he nevertheless agrees to be conquered by his devotees. He realized how kind of Lord Krishna was to him, and he was always in a trance, constantly thinking of Krishna. By such constant association with Lord Krishna, whatever darkness or material contamination remained within his heart was completely cleared away, and very shortly he was transferred to the spiritual kingdom, which is the goal of all saintly persons in the perfectional states of life. Shukadev Goswami has stated that all persons who hear this story of Sudama Vipra and Lord Krishna will know how the affectionate Lord Krishna is to Brahmana devotees like Sudama. Therefore, anyone who hears this story gradually becomes as qualified as Sudama Vipra and has thus transferred to the spiritual kingdom of Lord Krishna. That ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of 81st chapter of Krishna, to Brahmana Sudama, blessed by Lord Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Chapter 82. Lord Krishna and Balaram meet the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Once upon a time, while Lord Krishna and Balaram were living peacefully in their great city of Dwarka, there was the rare occasion of a full solar eclipse, such as takes place at the end of every kalpa or day of Brahma. At the end of every kalpa, the sun is covered by incessant rain covers the lower planetary systems up to Swargaloka. By astronomical calculation, people were informed about this great eclipse prior to its taking place, and therefore everyone, both men and women, decided to assemble at the holy place in Kurukshetra known as Samanta Panchaka.
The Samanta Panchaka's pilgrimage site is celebrated because Lord Parshurama performed great sacrifices there after killing all the Kshatriyas in the world 21 times. When Lord Parshuram killed all the Kshatriyas, their accumulated blood flowed like a stream. Lord Parshurama dug 5 big lakes at Samanta Panchaka and filled them with this blood. Lord Parshuram is Vishnu Tattva, as stated in Ishopanishad. Vishnu Tattva can't be contaminated by any sinful activity. Yet, although Lord Parshurama is fully powerful and uncontaminated, in order to exhibit ideal character, he performed great sacrifices at Samanta Panchaka to atone for his so-called sinful killing of the Kshatriyas. By his example, Lord Parshurama established that the killing art, although sometimes necessary, is not good. Lord Parshurama considered himself culpable for the sinful killing of the Kshatriyas. Therefore, how much more culpable are we for such abominable, unsanctioned acts? Thus, From time immemorial, the killing of living entities is prohibited all over the world.
Taking advantage of the occasion of the solar eclipse, all important persons from all parts of Bharatavarsha visited the holy place of pilgrimage. Some of the important personalities are mentioned as follows. Among the elderly persons were Akrura, Vasudeva, and Ugrasena, and among the younger generation were Gada, Pradyumna, Samba, and many other members of the Yadu dynasty who had come there with a view to atone for sinful activities accrued in the course of discharging their respective duties. Because almost all the members of the Yadu dynasty went to Kurukshetra, some important personalities like Aniruddha, the son of Pradyumna, and Kritavarma, the commander-in-chief of the Yadu dynasty, along with Suchandra, Shuka, and Sharana, remained in Dwaraka to protect the city.
All the members of the Yadu dynasty were naturally very beautiful. Yet on this occasion, when they appeared duly decorated with gold necklaces and flower garlands, dressed in valuable clothing and properly armed with their respective weapons, their natural beauty and personalities were 100 times enhanced. The members of the Yadu dynasty came to Kurukshetra in their gorgeously decorated chariots, which resembled the airplanes of the demigods, and which were pulled by big horses that moved like the waves of the ocean. Some Yadus rode on sturdy, stalwart elephants that moved like the clouds in the sky. Their wives were carried on beautiful palanquins by beautiful men whose features resembled those of the Vidyadharas. The entire assembly looked as beautiful as an assembly of the demigods of heaven.
After arriving in Kurukshetra, the members of the Yadu dynasty took their baths ceremoniously with self-control as enjoined in the Shastras, and they observed fasting for the whole period of the eclipse in order to nullify the reactions of their sinful activities. Since it is a Vedic custom to give in charity as much as possible during the hours of the eclipse, the members of the Yadu dynasty distributed many hundreds of cows in charity to the Brahmanas. All those cows were fully decorated with nice dress and ornaments. The special feature of these cows was that they had golden ankle bells and flower garlands on their necks.
After the eclipse, all the members of the Yadu dynasty again took their bath in lake created by Lord Parashurama. They are sumptuously fed by the Brahmanas with the first-class cooked food, all prepared in butter. According to the Vedic system, there are two classes of food. One is called raw food, and the other one is called cooked food. Raw food does not indicate raw vegetables and raw grain, but food boiled in water. Whereas cooked food is made in ghee, chapatis, dal, rice, and ordinary vegetables are called raw food, as the fruits and salads. But puris, kachoris, samosas, sweet balls, and so on are called cooked food. All the Brahmanas invited on occasion by the members of the Yadu dynasty were fed sumptuously with cooked food.
Interesting. The ceremonial functions performed by the members of the Yadu dynasty externally resemble the ritualistic ceremonies performed by the karmis. When a karmi performs some ritualistic ceremony, his ambition is sense gratification. A good position, good wife, good house, good children, or good wealth. But the ambition of the members of the Yadu Yadu dynasty was different. Their ambition was to offer Krishna perpetual devotion with faith. All the members of the Yadu dynasty were great devotees. As such, after many births of accumulated pious activities, they were given the chance to associate with Lord Krishna. In going to take their baths in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, in observing the regulative principles during the solar eclipse, or in feeding the brahmanas, in all their activities, they simply thought of devotion to Krishna. Their ideal worshipable Lord was Krishna and no one else.
After the Brahmanas are fed, it is the custom for the host, with their permission, to accept prasadam. Thus, with the permission of the Brahmanas, all the members of the Yadu dynasty took lunch. Then they selected resting places underneath big shady trees, and when they had taken sufficient rest, they prepared to receive visitors, among whom were relatives and friends, as well as many subordinate kings and rulers. They were the rulers of the Matsya province, Ushinara province, Koshala province, Vidarbha province, Kuru province, Srinjaya province, Kamboj province, Kekaya province, Madras province, Kunti province, Anharta province, Kerala province, and many other countries and provinces. Some of the rulers belonged to opposing parties, and some were friends. But above all, the visitors from Vrindavan were most prominent. The residents of Vrindavan, headed by Nanda Maharaj, had been living in great anxiety because of separation from Krishna and Balaram. Taking advantage of the solar eclipse, they all came to see their life and soul, Krishna and Balaram.
The inhabitants of Vrindavan were well-wishers and intimate friends of the Yadu dynasty. This meeting of the two parties after long separation was a very touching incident. All the Yadus and the residents of Vrindavan felt such great pleasure in meeting and talking together that it was a unique scene. Meeting after long separation, they were jubilant. Their hearts throbbed and their faces appeared like freshly bloomed lotus flowers. Drops of tears fell from their eyes. The hair on their bodies stood on end, and because of their extreme ecstasy, they were temporarily speechless. In other words, they dove into the ocean of happiness.
While the men were meeting in that way, the women also met one another in the same manner. They embraced one another in great friendship, smiling very mildly, and looked at one another with much affection. When they were embracing one another in their arms, the saffron and kumkuma spread on their breasts was exchanged from one person to other, and they all felt heavenly ecstasy. Due to such heart-to-heart embracing, torrents of tears glided down their cheeks. The juniors were offering obeisances to the elders, and the elders were offering their blessings to the juniors. They thus welcomed one another and asked after one another's welfare. Ultimately, however, all their talk was only of Krishna. All the neighbors and relatives were connected with Lord Krishna's pastimes in the world. And as such, Krishna was the center of all their activities. Whatever activities they performed, social, political, religious, or conventional, were transcendental.
The real elevation of human life rests on knowledge and renunciation. As stated in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service rendered to Krishna automatically produces perfect knowledge and renunciation. The family members of the Yadu dynasty and the cowherds of Vrindavan had their minds fixed on Krishna. That is the symptom of perfect knowledge. And because their minds were always engaged in Krishna, they were automatically freed from all material activities. This stage of life is called Yukta Vairagya, as enunciated by Srila Rupa Goswami, knowledge and renunciation. Therefore, do not mean dry speculation and renunciation of activities. Rather, one must start speaking and acting only in relationship with Krishna.
In this meeting of Kurukshetra, Kunti Devi and Vasudeva, who were sisters and brother, met after a long separation, after with their respective son and daughters-in-law, children and other family members. By talking among themselves, they soon forgot all their pastimes miseries. Kunti Devi specially addressed her brother Vasudeva as follows: "My dear brother, I am very fortunate because not one of my desires have been fulfilled. Otherwise, how could it be happen that although I have such a saintly brother as you, perfect in all respects, you did not inquire from me as to how I was passing my days in a distressed condition of life?" It appears that Kunti Devi was remembering the miserable days when she had been banished with her son through the mischievous plans of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. She continued, "My dear brother, I can understand when providence goes against someone. Even one's nearest relatives forget him. In such condition, even one's father, one's mother, or one's own children will forget him. Therefore, my dear brother, I do not accuse you."
Vasudeva replied to his sister, "My dear sister, do not be sorry and do not blame me in that way. We should always remember that we are all only toys in the hands of Providence. Everyone is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is under His control only that all kinds of fruitive actions and their reactions take place. My dear sister, you know that we were very much harassed by King Kamsa, and by his persecutions we were scattered here and there. We were always full of anxieties. Only in the last few days have we returned to our own places by the grace of God."
After this conversation, Vasudeva and Ugrasena received the kings who came to see them, and they warmly welcomed them all. Seeing Lord Krishna present on the spot, all the visitors felt transcendental pleasure and became very peaceful. Some of the prominent visitors were as follows: Bhishmadeva, Dronacharya, Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana, Gandhari, along with their sons, King Yudhishthira along with his wife, and the Pandavas along with Kunti, as well as Sanjaya, Vidura, Kripacharya, Kunti Bhoj, Virat, Bhishmaka, King Nagnajit, Purujit, Drupada, Shalya, Drishtaketu, the king of Kashi, Damghosh, Vishalaksha, the king of Mithila, the king of Madras, formerly known as Madra, the king of Kekaya, Yudhamanyu, Sushmara, Bahlika, along with his sons, and many other rulers subordinate to the king Yudhishthira.
When the visitors saw Lord Krishna with his thousands of queens, they were fully satisfied at the sight of such beauty and transcendental opulence. All who were there personally visited Lord Balarama and Krishna, and being properly welcomed by them, they began to glorify the members of the Yadu dynasty, especially Krishna and Balaram. Because Ugrasen was the king of the Bhojas, he was considered the chief Yadu and therefore the visitors specifically addressed him. Your Majesty Ugrasena, King of the Bhojas, factually the Yadus are the only persons within this world who are perfect in all respects. All glory is unto you. All glory is unto you. The specific condition of your perfection is that you always see Lord Krishna, who is sought by many mystic yogis undergoing severe austerities and penances for great numbers of years. All of you are in direct touch with Lord Krishna at every moment.
All the Vedic hymns glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. The Ganges water is considered sanctified because of its being the water used to wash the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. The Vedic scriptures are nothing but the injunctions of Lord Krishna. The purpose of the study of all the Vedas is to know Krishna. Therefore, the words of Krishna and the message of his pastimes are always purifying. By the influence of time and circumstances, all the opulences of this world were almost completely wiped out. But since Krishna has appeared on this planet, all auspicious features have again appeared due to the touch of his lotus feet. Because of his presence, all our ambitions and desires are gradually being fulfilled. Your Majesty, King of the Bhojas, you are related with the Yadu dynasty by matrimonial relationship and by blood relationship as also. As a result, you are constantly associating with Lord Krishna and you have no difficulty in seeing him or touching him at any time. Lord Krishna moves with you, talks with you, sits with you, rests with you, and dines with you. The Yadu appeared to be always engaged in worldly affairs, which are considered to be the royal road to hell. But due to the presence of Lord Krishna, the original personality of Godhead, in the Vishnu category, who is omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, all of you are factually relieved from all material contamination and are situated in the transcendental position of liberation and Brahman existence.
When Nanda Maharaj and the other residents of Vrindavan had heard that Krishna would be present in Kurukshetra because of the solar eclipse, and that all the members of the Yadu dynasty would also be there, they had immediately prepared to go there. King Nanda, accompanied by his cowherd men, had loaded all their necessary paraphernalia on bullock carts, and all of the Vrindavan residents had come to Kurukshetra to see their beloved sons, Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna. When the cowherd men of Vrindavan arrived in Kurukshetra, all the members of the Yadu dynasty were most pleased. As soon as they saw the residents of Vrindavan, they stood up to welcome them and appeared to have regained their life. All the Yadus and Vrindavan residents had been very eager to meet, and when they actually came forward and met, they embraced one another to their heart's satisfaction and remained in embrace for a considerable time.
As soon as Vasudeva saw Nanda Maharaj, Vasudeva jumped up and ran over to him and embraced him as very affectionately. Vasudeva began to narrate his own past history, how he had been imprisoned by King Kamsa, how his babies had been killed, how immediately after Krishna's birth he had carried Krishna to the place of Nanda Maharaj, and how Krishna and Balaram had been raised by Nanda Maharaj and his queen Yashoda as their own children. Similarly, Lord Balaram and Krishna also embraced King Nanda and Mother Yashoda, and then they offered their respect onto their lotus pit by bowing down. Because of their feeling affection for Nanda and Yashoda, Lord Krishna and Balarama became choked up, and for a few seconds they could not speak. The most fortunate King Nanda and Mother Yashoda placed their sons on their laps and began to embrace them to their full satisfaction. Because of separation from Krishna and Balaram, King Nanda and Yashoda had been merged in great distress for a very long time. Now, and after meeting them and embracing them, all their sufferings were mitigated. Nice.
After this, Krishna's mother Devaki and Balaram's mother Rohini both embraced Mother Yashoda. They said, "Dear Queen Yashoda Devi, you and Nanda Maharaj have been great friends to us, and when we remember you, we are immediately overwhelmed by the thought of your friendly activities. We are so indebted to you that even if we were to return your benediction by giving you the opulence of the King of Heaven, it would not be enough to repay you for your friendly behavior. We shall never forget your kindly behavior towards us. When Krishna and Balaram were born, before they even saw their real father and mother, they were entrusted to your care, and you raised them as your own children, fostering them as birds take care of their offspring to the nest. You have nicely fed, nourished, and loved them, and have performed many auspicious religious ceremonies for their benefit." Do you want to read? Yeah.
You want to read that, Cherry?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Come, you want to read? Okay.
Actually, they are not our sons. They belong to you. Nanda Maharaj and you are the real father and mother of Krishna and Balaram. As long as they were under your care, they had not even a pinch of difficulty. Under your protection, they were completely out of the way of all kinds of fear. This most affectionate care which you have taken for them is completely befitting an elevated position. The most noble personalities do not discriminate between their own sons and sons of others, and there can't be any personalities more noble than Nanda Maharaj and you.
As far as the gopis of Vrindavan were concerned, from the very beginning of their lives, they did not know anything beyond Krishna. Krishna and Balaram were their life and soul. The gopis were so attached to Krishna that they could not tolerate not seeing him even momentarily when their eyelids blinked and impeded their vision. They condemned Brahma, the creator of the body, because he foolishly made eyelids which blinked and checked their seeing Krishna. Because they had been separated from Krishna for so many years, the gopis, having come along with Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, felt intense ecstasy upon seeing Krishna. No one can even imagine how eager the gopis were to see Krishna again. As soon as Krishna became visible to them, they took him inside their hearts, through their eyes, and embraced him to their full satisfaction. Even though they were embracing Krishna only mentally, they became so ecstatic and overwhelmed with joy that for the time being they completely forgot themselves. The ecstatic trance they achieved simply by mentally embracing Krishna is impossible to achieve even for great yogis constantly engaged in meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna could understand that the gopis were wrapped in ecstasy by embracing him in their minds, and therefore, since he is present in everyone's heart, he reciprocated the embracing from within.
Krishna was sitting with Mother Yashoda and his other mothers, Devaki and Rohini. But when the mothers engaged in talking, he took the opportunity and went to a secluded place to meet the gopis. As soon as he approached the gopis, the Lord smiled, and after embracing them and inquiring about their welfare, he began to encourage them, saying, "My dear friends, you know that Lord Balarama and I left Vrindavan just to please our relatives and family members. Thus, we were long engaged in fighting with our enemies and were obliged to forget you, who were so much attached to me in love and affection. I can understand that I have been ungrateful to you, but still I know that you are faithful to me. May I inquire if you have been thinking of us, although we had to leave you behind? My dear gopis, do you now dislike remembering me, considering me to have been ungrateful to you? Do you take my misbehavior with you very seriously?"
After all, you should know that it was not my intention to leave you. Our separation was ordained by Providence, who after all is the supreme controller and does as he desires. He causes the intermingling of different persons and again disperses them as he desires. Sometimes we said that a strong wind will mingle together clouds, atomic particles of dust or broken pieces of cotton, and after the strong wind subsides, all the clouds, particles of dust, and pieces of cotton are again separated, scattered in different places. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the creator of everything. The objects we see are different manifestations of His energy. By His supreme will, we are sometimes united and sometimes separated. We can therefore conclude that ultimately we are absolutely dependent on His will.
Fortunately, you have developed loving affection for me, which is the only way to achieve the transcendental position associated with me. Any living entity who develops such unalloyed devotion, affection for me, certainly at the end goes back home, back to Godhead. In other words, unalloyed devotional service and affection for me are the cause of the supreme liberation. My dear Gopi friends, you may know from me that it is my energies only which are acting everywhere. Take, for example, an earthen pot. It is nothing but a combination of earth, water, air, fire, and sky. It is always the same physical composition, whether in the beginning, during its existence, or after its annihilation. When it's created, the earthen pot is made of earth, water, fire, air, and sky, which remains the same as the composition. When it is broken and annihilated, its different ingredients are conserved in the different parts of the material energy. Similarly, at the creation of this cosmic manifestation, during its maintenance and after its dissolution, everything is but different manifestation of my energy. And because of the energy is not separate from me, it is to be concluded that I am existing in everything.
In the same way, the body of a living being is nothing but a composition of the 5 elements, and the living entity embodied in the material condition is also part and parcel of me. The living entity is imprisoned in the material condition on account of his false conception of himself as the supreme enjoyer. This false ego of the living entity, as well as to his material embodiment. The 2 energies, material and spiritual, both act under my supreme control. My dear gopis, I request that instead of being afflicted, you try to accept everything with a philosophical attitude. Then you will understand that you are always with me and that there is no cause of lamentation in our being separated from one another.
This important instruction by Lord Krishna to the gopis can be utilized by all devotees engaged in Krishna consciousness. The whole philosophy is considered on the basis of inconceivable, simultaneous oneness and difference. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that He is present everywhere in His impersonal feature. Everything exists in Him, but still He is not personally present everywhere. The cosmic manifestation is nothing but a display of Krishna's energy, and because the energy is not different from the energetic, nothing is different from Krishna. When this absolute consciousness, Krishna consciousness, is absent, we are separated from Krishna. But fortunately, if this Krishna consciousness is present, then we are not separated from Krishna. The process of devotional service is the revival of Krishna consciousness. And if the devotee is fortunate enough to understand that the material energy is not separate from Krishna, then he can utilize the material energy and its products in the service of the Lord. But in the absence of Krishna consciousness, the forgetful living entity, although part and parcel of Krishna, falsely puts himself in the position of enjoyer of the material world. And, being thus implicated in material entanglement, is forced by the material energy to continue his material existence. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Although a living entity is forced to act by the material energy, he falsely thinks that he is the all in all and the supreme enjoyer.
If the devotee knows perfectly that the Arch Vigraha or deity form of Lord Krishna in the temple is exactly the same Satchidananda Vigraha as Krishna himself, then his service to the temple deity becomes direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, the temple itself, the temple paraphernalia, and the food offered to the deity are also not separate from Krishna. One has to follow the rules and regulations prescribed by the acharyas, and thus, under superior guidance, Krishna realization is fully possible, even in the material existence.
The gopis, having been instructed by Krishna in this philosophy of simultaneously oneness and difference, remained always in Krishna consciousness, and thus become liberated from all material contamination. The consciousness of the living entity who falsely presents himself as the enjoyer of the material world is called Jiva Kosha, which means imprisonment by the false ego. Not only the gopis, but anyone who follows these instructions of Krishna is immediately freed from the Jiva Kosha imprisonment. A person in full Krishna consciousness is always liberated from false egoism. He utilizes everything for Krishna's service and is not at any time separated from Krishna.
The gopis therefore prayed to Krishna, "Dear Krishna, from your navel emanated the original lotus flower. Which is the birth site of Brahma, the Creator. No one can estimate your glories or your opulence, which therefore remain always a mystery, even the highest thoughtful man, the master of all yogic power. However, the conditioned soul fallen in the dark well of this material existence can very easily take shelter of your lotus feet. Thus, this deliverance is guaranteed." The gopis continued, "Dear Krishna, we are always busy in our family affairs. We therefore request that you remain within our heart as the rising sun. That will be your greatest benediction." The gopis are always liberated souls because they are fully in Krishna consciousness. They only pretended to be entangled in the household affairs in Vrindavan. Because of this separation from Krishna, he might have asked them to return to him to this capital city, Dwarka. But the inhabitants of Vrindavan, the gopis, were not interested in the idea of going with Krishna to Dwarka. They wanted to remain busy in Vrindavan and thus feel the presence of Krishna in every step of their lives. They immediately invited Krishna to come back to Vrindavan. This transcendental emotional existence of gopis is the basic principle of Chaitanya's teaching. The Ratha Yatra festival observed by Lord Chaitanya is the emotional process of taking Krishna back to Vrindavan. Srimati Radharani refused to go with Krishna to Dwarka to enjoy his company in the atmosphere of royal opulence, for she wanted to enjoy his company in the regional Vrindavan atmosphere. Lord Krishna, being profoundly attached to the gopis, never goes away from Vrindavan, and gopis or other residents of Vrindavan remain fully satisfied in Krishna consciousness. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta part of 82nd chapter of Krishna. Lord Krishna Balarama meet the inhabitants of Vrindavan.
Evil. So that concludes our 1 hour of reading to Srila Prabhupada. We want to thank you, Srila Prabhupada, for allowing us to come and read your Krishna book to you. And as always, let us offer our respectful obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and to each other. Nama Om Vishnuvedaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paskachade Shatarane, and to each other Vanchakalpaturvishcha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Keep coming back. Krishna book ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.